Welcome to Inside the House podcast, episode 9. Today we're here with Franki Johnson.
Hi.
And we are going off topic slightly from our normal one, talking about Generation Z. So please follow us on social media, on Instagram, and obviously subscribe on YouTube. Franki, do you introduce yourself for us? Give us a little bit of information about you.
My name's Franki Johnson, and I inspire and educate business leaders to embrace the changes of future generations. So what on earth does that mean?
Yep.
I've been studying Generation Z for around 3 years now, and I have noticed huge barriers between Generation Z expectation and current workplace practice. And now I educate leaders in attracting, retaining, engaging, and training the younger generations.
Yeah. So I heard some of your little speeches online on LinkedIn, actually, and that's why I found you. And for me, I think it's very interesting that we as a business and many other businesses are having exactly the same problems of what you're talking about, day-to-day, real-world employing younger people.
Yeah.
And that for me is definitely a problem for us in business, and I think across our industry as well. So it'd be interesting to get some insights from you today. So what's your sort of career path? Where did you start? What did you do? What did you want to be when you were younger?
When I was younger, I always wanted to be an ice skater. I started ice skating when I was 8 years old and always had a dream of working for Disney on Ice, touring the world. And that was my career set all the way through school.
Yep.
I was a bit of a rogue at school, maybe. I always knew I had my skating, so I went through school and went through college and auditioned for Disney on Ice.
Yep.
And I got in. So I went away to America to do a year with them.
Yep.
And when I came back, I'd met my partner before we went away, so we said I'd go away and do a year. And I came back and I realised I'd only ever skated, performed, didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought, well, I like festivals and events and hospitality and people. I'll go and do a degree in events and hospitality management. And it was during that degree I really engaged in the concept of employee engagement and decided to write my dissertation on engaging millennials. And I soon found out that millennials weren't the fresh meat of the workforce anymore, and actually that's Generation Z.
Yep.
They're a whole different breed of people, kettle of fish, and it just took me into this new career path, which I'm really loving.
Yeah, definitely. And you sort of doing so many different things with so many different hats on with what you're doing with obviously podcasts and your speaking as well, which I thought was very, very good.
Yeah.
So why isn't there a career path to your, say, 50 years old within skating? Why did you?
That was my partner, because we met.
Yeah.
Before we went away, I'd said, I need a year, otherwise I'll kick myself when I'm older.
Yeah.
I don't want to break up and resent you,
Yeah,
so I'll go away and we'll see if we're still together, and if we're still together, I'll come off the road.
Okay,
And so I
cool.
did.
You did.
And then I figured I have no idea what I want to do with my life, because I've only ever been a performer.
Yeah, and you couldn't be a skating teacher?
I suppose you could,
Yeah.
but
Wasn't
it's
for
a
you?
lot of 4:30 a.m. starts.
Okay.
And it wasn't really my lifestyle.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, what is Generation Z? We should tell people what Generation Z is.
Generation Z is anyone born between 1995 and 2010. So there's a huge misperception that anybody born around the 2000s or anybody under 30 must be a millennial, but that's not true.
Okay.
Millennials are nearly 40 and stepping up to leadership roles, and Generation Z are sort of anybody under 24, so they're coming up to the workforce now, and everybody thinks, we can't retain these millennials, all these millennials are so self-entitled, and actually they're talking about Generation Z because they're the digital natives with higher expectations than all of us.
Yeah, and so what would be, obviously you did a dissertation on it, but what would be some of the big contrasting differences you found between Generation Z and millennials?
A lot of it is to do with the technology.
Okay.
So we can now work anytime, anywhere, with any device. And I think, an app can change the world overnight, but mindsets don't change that quickly. So we get stuck in this generation, and it's a lot to do with the digital world. They want to work flexibly. They want quick progression, things like that. They're not just going into a job for stability anymore. It's this stability vs fulfillment, and I want to live my best life. There's so many differences between the two generations, and it's about understanding them, being curious about them, trying to adopt characteristics of younger generations, because they work more quicker, efficient than our traditional ways of working.
Yeah. I suppose from an employer's point of view, sometimes it's difficult to manage the different generations within the workplace, and also the different generations' expectations as well.
Yeah.
And, you can probably see why certain people would resent them in an organisation if they're working quicker and they're more, they can work from home or they want to work from home. How do you manage that for an employer? That's a difficult one sometimes, especially today in today's workplace when you're mixing them. I think if you had a whole bunch of Generation Z in one room, that's fine because you could probably manage them all and look after them all. But when you're blending them too, because they're so contrastingly different, that causes complications.
It can do, but Generations are the most hyper-custom generation ever. They're so personalised. You know, they personalise their playlist, their shopping list, everything. And when we get with the workforce, we need to treat every generation, every person personalised as well. And with the challenges with the multi-generational differences or characteristics, Generation Z don't necessarily have any new expectations. They just have higher expectations. So pay and salary, career progression, supportive management, all these things, they're not new things. They're just now expected.
Yep.
But if we try and deliver to the highest expectations of our workforce, then we're always going to exceed the expectation of older generations as well.
Yep.
So that's how we tackle that. We engage everyone. You know, we apply initiatives to everyone, and that will make everybody happy.
Yeah, true. I think sometimes it can be difficult with the younger ones. We've got a few in the business, and they tend to find. I think you're right. Some of the things like fast progression. That's certainly something that's very apparent. They seem to want to do it within 6 months, whereas someone would have taken maybe 2 to 3 years prior, and that's a contrasting difference.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
There's not always that amount of positions within businesses, certainly smaller businesses, to say, okay, yeah, we can progress you at that rate. So you do naturally have the staff turnover will change a lot quicker because you can't continually promote someone at that speed unless you're a very big organisation.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen stats. Millennials, Generation Z might have up to 8 to 10 careers in their lifetime because of that reason. But if you want to retain top talent, then you have to pull people in, you have to sit them down and say, what do you want out of this job? You know, one person might say, well, I work 5 minutes around the corner and I value that it's close to home. And somebody might say, I want to be where you are in 5 years. So we have to treat those people differently, and we have to say, okay, let's figure out a career growth plan for you and where you can go. And if you want more responsibility but there isn't necessarily available, let's find your responsibility. And there's so many responsibilities, you know, to do with social media, to do with business growth, outreach. There's lots of extra responsibilities and careers that we can create. But this need for career progression, is education accessibility. You know, Generation Z, they've started at GCSE, they did a couple of years GCSE, it's very tailored, they've tailored from GCSE, then they go into their A-levels, then they go into university, and it's like 7 years, bam, 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 it's so quick.
Yep.
And then they come into the workplace and it's dead-end job for
Slow.
the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And I have friends who are teachers who are 24 and they're done. They're done. They want to either move up to head teacher or move on to another career, and they've only just started.
Yeah. So what sort of things do you think have influenced this? Obviously, you've covered a few already, but what are the major influences that have changed their way they're thinking, their drive of how they're actually... Is it the technology that's actually changed the hardware of how they're thinking?
The technology is one of the most dominant influences, yes, of course. Millennials, people think the millennials are the digital natives, but... Generation Z are the true digital natives. If you think of it like this, Generation Z were born 1995, that's their birthright, and social media went sort of mainstream around 2007, which would put Generation Z born in 1995 at 12 years old. Yep. And 12 years old is the beginning of your critical cognitive development stage. So we're hitting, 12-year-olds in school, all this social media, and then it changes a person, for sure. Yeah. So we have technology, social media, education accessibility, the economic recession shared globally. Generation Z watch their parents' businesses and lose houses overnight, and they're very aware that they do need stability as well. We've also got the rise of terrorism that sort of shaped Generation Z. Anybody born after 95 can't necessarily process the impact that 9/11 had on the world as anyone born before, so they've grown up with the rise of terrorism not really knowing any different.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah,
That'll make a big difference, I suppose. And also things like that with the technology, I suppose if you think about the speed of technology when I was a kid, I'm just thinking about speed again. The computers would take to wait for them to start up. Nowadays with modern computers or phones, they're on instantly,
So
pretty
quick.
much. And then you try and do or save a document and you wait for it to spin. And now everything's instantaneous. And with social media flicking continuously, it's instantaneous. It's almost unlimited. With YouTube, video is instantaneous, unlimited. So I suppose you can kind of see where that expectation of not having to wait anymore is kind of gone. That to me was
slow technology in the workplace is massive demotivator. We have this famous 8-second attention span that Generation Z have, which millennials wasn't on average 16-second attention span, so we've halved our attention. And if that halves again, we have a 4-second attention span and a 2-second attention span. And is that if the web page is loading and it takes longer than 8 seconds, they've clicked off it, they've gone already.
So I think, because obviously I run an e-commerce website, and we always talk about how many seconds people will click on and click off of a site from a sales perspective, and we always look at, say, I think the average is anything more than 4 seconds, and you're going to lose a huge amount of your traffic. And with Generation Z, they're saying in 2020 is going to make up about 40% of the customers in the e-commerce, and all customers, I suppose. But that time of 4 seconds for a web page is going to have to get down to maybe less than 2.
It needs to be instant.
Otherwise, it's going to be needed instant. Otherwise, they're going to just click off because they're going to be bored.
It needs to be instant, or there needs to be something else available to distract them at that time.
Yeah, something to distract them. Yeah, that's true. That makes sense. So we're talking about social media just briefly as well. We touched on that a minute ago. Social media. How's that influencing Generation Z from a point of view of how they're feeling? Mental health side of it, problems with bullying maybe on social media.
It's such a big topic, isn't it?
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that we haven't had a generation experience the intensity of social media like this yet. So I think Generation Z are having a really hard time in school. That we are finding the devil of social media first. And I think it will take for Generation Z to come into their adulthood to be able to train the next generation in digital health, because we don't necessarily we're not trained in digital health. There's courses online to be trained in digital health, but social media, there's a huge positivity community on social media, and social media isn't the problem. What we type in is the problem. I think people forget, because the internet is such a big part of our lives now, people forget that the internet doesn't have a brain and a heart and feelings. It works on algorithms. So if you're typing in 6'1" models in Australia, that's what the internet's going to give you. And then so many, 6'1" models in Australia is going to make you feel a bit frumpy after a while,
Why you're not 6'1" model?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
But I had a bit of a social media detox, and it wasn't a case of come off it. It was, if I see something on my feed that doesn't inspire me, doesn't motivate me, actually makes me feel negative about myself, I unfollow it, I get rid of it. And I worked on my own fulfillment and things that do inspire and motivate me. And now I can follow all those 6'1" models back in Australia, and I can be happy for them because I'm fulfilling my life and they're fulfilling theirs. But when you're lost and you're not sure where your fulfillment is, and you're following all these people who are fulfilled, then you do start to get mental health. Am I not on the right path? I'm not moving quick enough. We're not just competing with somebody in our class anymore or our club. We're competing with the best person online.
In the world.
Yeah, in the world.
They're probably online.
Competition is so much more. People are so aware of the options out there. They're so aware of the competitions, and it's understanding what to do with them. And that's something that I think the education system probably needs to be kept up with. Because I noticed that some older generations, they can't even say social media without it being, it's like it's not a part of our world. They go, social media, social media, like it's like it shouldn't be talked about. But it's like, it's making our world go round, and especially for the young people. And I think it is causing problems for mental health, but it's not the problem. It's just part of the problem. But actually, it could also be a medicine, if you like, and take the problem away. But that's up to us.
Someone's got to teach it to do that.
Yeah.
When you mentioned a sort of like digital health, is that what you coined it digital health? Never heard of it till today, so that's interesting. And I did recently listen to another podcast, they mentioned that there was a company in the States to do with mental health trying to actually use AI technology to actually understand where people have unfortunately committed suicide, children have committed suicide in America, and they're actually using the AI to try and work out where there any differences on their social media interaction. Has been able to blueprint it and say, hey, do you know what, if it follows this pattern, it can flag a warning for parents to say, actually, all these.
So that's an algorithm worth using.
It's an algorithm, yeah, well, that's what I mean. So it takes people of a certain position to want to do that and get to that stage. Like you say, I think as maybe Generation Z get through the workplace, find leadership roles, they can then go back and influence the health online from a social media point of view.
Absolutely, and they don't necessarily realise, they don't understand the world without social media, do they? So I remember when I left school, I thought every CEO and every business owner had it together, when in fact nobody has it together and everybody's winging it as they go. And Generation Z, I don't want them to come out of school and think everyone's got it together and that they're going to get looked after, because they're not. They're very much in the world by themselves, dealing with this by themselves, and if they go down dark paths, there's not necessarily that team there to support them. I really do think it's going to take them to step up and say, hang on a minute, I went through this, I don't want you to have to go through that.
I suppose you look at it on it's like a bigger scale. I think if you was in school, say, well, I was a bit older, so I'm pre-millennial. I found out today on the way here. But if you look at it before, there may have been one or two bad eggs at school who caused the bullying. May have been the bad people. Does that make sense within the school? Well, they could influence only a small amount of people. But now with social media, they can expand. And you talk about terrorism earlier. That's the same sort of thing. Whereas before, it would have been quite difficult to do what can be done today in the speed of social media and influencing people. In a local community, it's been quite difficult to do it at that scale. Whereas today, you get one person, someone falls on a path, they then see the social media, can get influenced even more, and then they become indoctrinated in this feeling and in terrorism or whatever it may be.
Definitely.
But that can happen locally with bullying or bullies and in all different areas.
And trolling's horrendous.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we have too many nice people that say, okay, well, come off social media because that's no good for me, when in fact it's those people that we need on social media to spread the love a little bit more. Bullying's always going to be there, isn't it? There's always going to be the bullies. I hope that the positivity community grows, which it is. And we can continue to combat that and help combat that, but I don't have a solution to end bullying, no.
No, and fake versus real, I think that's something that's again in the media yesterday, I think, and today in the news, they're talking about, people are trying to get these fake videos and fake things stopped, but also that's people making fake videos and fake broadcasts, but also you've got people on social media faking it, and you say about people looking at the best in the world, well, they're looking on social media what they think is the best in the world, but that could be fake. So even more pressure, people going around hiring a Ferrari and saying, hey, this is my car, look at my house, parking outside the house. It's not even their house, it's not even their car, and this sort of stuff goes on. And when I first heard about it, I was thinking, really, who would go to that extreme? But it does actually happen.
Yeah, of course it does. And I don't think the media has necessarily changed. The media has always lied, hasn't it? The media has always been fake, and the paper, it's just more intense and it's more in your face, because you choose to go out and get a paper, whereas on your phone, okay, yeah, you choose to have your feeds, but it's so much more easily accessible, all this fake news coming to you. But I think the world's slowly getting exposed. And I think there's a lot of people coming out and saying the right things, exposing the fake news, and it seems like it's getting all out of control, and I think it has to kind of come back together. And this is another thing of digital health. The kids need to be told what's fake, what's real. But then again, on the other side of this, with employee engagement particularly, people are thinking it's not real, but they want it to be real to be happy. Okay, so let's make it real. Let's create this fun culture that we all see on social media that we so long for, that the grass is greener. Let's create that green grass and, invite people in and make people happy. And then it becomes real. It doesn't have to be fake so much.
No. So one of the companies I've always wanted to work for is Innocent Drinks. I always think, if you ever follow their social media,
No.
that's amazing. It's the fun. It sounds like, from a marketing point of view, it sounds like the most fun marketing place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's the stuff they put out, the content's hilarious, and again, it's engaging, but it's also so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you want to work for them, because they're so much fun. So
You've nailed it.
Yeah, they've pretty much nailed that. That's good. Frankie, what do you feel is the majority of mental health issues nowadays?
I think there's a lot of different aspects, elements that cause mental health. I think that, globalization and having a lot more options and choices, and we don't know how to sort of cleanse ourselves is a huge part of that. But the world has seen a huge shift from affluence to influence. And to give you some perspective on this, at a point in time, Oxfam reported that the 85 richest people in the world own the same equivalent wealth to the 3.5 billion poorest people. And what this meant for media was, to earn media, you paid for it. It was in a newspaper, it was on a TV advertisement, it was on a bulletin board. You paid for it, and that was an affluent world. And for the most part, how Maslow's hierarchy, so we fulfill our basic and psychological needs before we feel the need to fulfill our self-esteem and self-actualization. And in an affluent world, that worked okay, because generally when you're paying for media, you've already got your house, your family, you've got your basic and psychological needs fulfilled. But then we see a shift to an influent world. This is when anybody anywhere has access to technology. You don't have to pay for media anymore. You can film your own video. You can influence from your bedroom for absolutely nothing. Yeah. And now we have influencers coming out. Anybody can influence anything, and we have so many more opinions, options, competition, choices. And in this influent world, I see people reaching for the self-actualization and self-esteem, and this might be how many likes that you've got, how many followers you've got, and you could have 100,000 followers and you could be so self-actualized, but you haven't got your basic and psychological needs fulfilled. Yep. And that becomes very, very, very confusing. And I really believe this is where we start seeing the suicides from things like Love Island. Yep. Because they're so self-actualized, they've got such high self-esteem, but their most basic needs aren't fulfilled. And I think from when you're growing up in education, this is something that we need to be taught. We need to have these psychological and basic needs fulfilled before we go onto that self-actualization, because that, I think it ruins you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you look at some of the celebrities who've gone bust, basically, or personally, you can see straight away they haven't really got themselves sorted, maybe. They've maybe gone down a road of chasing, social, they may have bought too many things, bought things they can't afford, haven't got the basic things in, because they're trying to chase, a vision of themselves that they even themselves don't know who they really are, and they've got lots of people following them, influencing them. Yeah. They're buying nice handbags or shoes or cars or whatever it may be. And
they're trying to live up to everybody else's expectation
100%.
All the time. And it's, my cousin told me a couple of years ago, Frankie, you have to be your number one, because once you're number one, then everything else will fall into place. Yep. And you have to look after yourself. And in the world that we live in now, it's so important that you give yourself that work-life balance, or work-school balance, or whatever it is, and take time for yourself to look after your mental health and make sure it's okay. And I think more and more people are talking about mental health now, and it's becoming easier to talk about. You can talk to peers, and it's getting better.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think people think it's getting worse, but I think it's just that you were ignorant to the problem before. The problem's always been there. Yeah. The pressures of the problem are getting worse, but I think it's great that we're all talking.
Yeah, it's a bit like, if you look at the news years ago, well, you chat to your parents and you think to yourself, they're saying, there's never all these stabbings in my day. And I said, they probably were.
They were.
They didn't know they weren't broadcast and they weren't out there. And now it's very much more in the media and very much more on point. But you seem like you've really got yourself very much, you're in the right space in yourself. You come across as if you've got everything nailed down, you know what you want to do, you know what you want to be. But there must have been stages where you didn't have that.
Oh, yeah.
And they can be some darker days as well, when you're thinking, let's say probably when you came back, I'm guessing, from your skating, what did you want to do? Are they days where they were harder and darker for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was never worried because I knew I was young, and I knew that I had drive and ambition, and I knew that I was never going to settle for anything less than I deserved or wanted. Yeah. And I've always been really laid back, chilled out. So that was okay. Then in the second year of uni, I lost my dad. And then that really knocked me for a few years. And I'm only really just coming out of that now, strength. That really, really knocked me. But during that time, I've been to the deepest, darkest corners of my mind. I've done the whole mental health thing. I've done the counselling. And I've read so many mind management books. I'm not together. Yep. I've done a hell of a lot of work to understand my mind and how I cope with things, and it all comes down to being a nice person, really.
You've put the effort in. It's like anything in life, isn't it? If you didn't put the effort in, then you wouldn't be in the situation you are today. A strong person, got an idea what you want to do, what you want to change, what difference you want to make. Whereas if you'd have sat there in them darker days and not maybe found that path to try and say, do you know what, I want to keep motivated, I want to keep pushing forward, and I want to go and read the book and find out what's going on, and I want to try and get my head sorted. If you didn't put that effort in, you wouldn't be here today. Probably. I
don't know where I'd be today.
Exactly, and that's obviously very good of you to do that, but also it's the fact that sometimes people can't always find that. They might need a bit of assistance, and you may have someone around you that could have been that rock to help you, but then equally if you haven't got that, then it's difficult. People do fall off the path very easily.
And I think the start of bouncing back is rock bottom, because you can go for so long feeling sorry for yourself and that you're broken and you're never going to fix, but you have to reach rock bottom and realise, I don't want to live my life like this. Life's far too short. I need to do something with it. And then once you've got the seed that you want to change your life, then you can go to counselling, and then you can put the effort in to change it. And I've watched so many videos, books, all sorts of things on how to be mentally healthy.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
that's
to
really
come
good.
Back.
So just we're talking about pressures of life and also social media pressures. But if social media carries on as it is today, what's the future of social media pressures going forward?
I think there could be potentially a lot of miserable people. However, like I said before, with the positivity community on social media, I think more and more people will become part of those communities. And I think when Gen Z step into adulthood and have their own children, they will make sure they're part of that positivity community. Yeah.
It's going to make a bit of a difference.
Yeah. But it's funny because you think that it'd be the next generation, but it's not always. When Facebook came out, it was predominantly millennials on Facebook. And then millennials told mum about Facebook, and then they told grandma about Facebook. And what's worse, grandma's commenting on Facebook and millennials come off. So actually, we think a lot of the problems are with the younger generations, when actually the older generations have some of the highest growing demographic in social media. And I think it was a Gary Vee video that told us the highest growing sector on YouTube is for selfies, posting selfies, is older women.
Really?
Between sort of 40s and 50s. They're the ones who are posting selfies more.
I suppose they found the setting on the camera now. I'll turn it around. Wow, I can now do a selfie. I didn't realise that. Up until then, they've probably been turning the phone around and trying to push the button.
But this is what happens. The younger ones go, Mum, look at this, and then Mum's on there, and then they're like, sack out. I'm out of here. And Gen Z, they take to Snapchat and Instagram. And it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, actually. So firstly, what is the next generation after Gen Z, or what's due to happen next?
So, what's due to happen?
They're going to get there soon, aren't they?
I love it.
If you think the age category, they're out there.
They're already around.
They're there, but what are we labelling them as? Because we love using labels.
So generations aren't defined by birth years. They're defined by significant events that happen at critical cognitive development stages that shape a generation. So at the moment, we have our generations by birth years sort of every 15 years, and that's because we've had big events really reoccurring every 15 years. So after 2010, some media have labelled the next generation alphas. And then I read a book, and I actually really prefer this theory, is that because of increasing work-life expectancy and because of rapid technological advancements, we could potentially see generations shorten to only 4 or 5 years long, which means by 2080 we could experience up to 10 to 15 generational differences in the workplace at once. And in a world where generations are only 4 years long, that's a case of not labelling generations, but a case of adopting efficient change and keeping up to date with the newest generations coming through. Because what we tend to be really good at, especially in HR and employee engagement, we have really reactive strategies. We tend to wait for the workplace to get there. They're disengaged and demotivated, staff's retention is high, and then we realise, we can't be spending an average £30,000 staff. What do we need to do to engage them? And we implement strategies far too late, and then we've got the next generation coming through.
We've lost them by then.
We've lost them.
Yeah.
Which is such a shame, because then we have a whole generation of 15, 20 years sat there demotivated in the workplace, and I think that's very much what's happened to millennials. I think we've failed millennials, really. We've not allowed them to explore the digital world as much as they would have liked to, because they've had the baby boomer parents that are very loyal and hardworking and have said, no, stay under the line, don't put your head above the parapet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think from that point of view as well, with technology, what's going to be the next, in your obviously in your opinion, we don't know yet, but what's your next sort of technology? Obviously Snapchat today is a big social platform. What do you think's next?
We have TikTok coming up, don't we? I saw TikTok a year or two ago, and I downloaded it, and I honestly thought it was going to be a phase. I thought it was going to be a bit of a Pixo type thing when I was in school. But no, there's a lot of uses of TikTok, and it's teaching kids to make videos. We're teaching kids to make creative videos. Facebook are now, or maybe next year, releasing algorithms, so everyone will be able to see why they are seeing the post that they're seeing, which I think is brilliant, so the next generation will potentially understand algorithms. We obviously have our AI, our VR, our 3D printing. It's a world that the kids can't remember a time before you couldn't see somebody through a phone. A dial tone is like, what's this noise to me? Or what's this phone that spins round? Have you seen that video on YouTube of the lads that try and work the phone? They don't know how to do it.
They'll just spin it around.
They don't know how to do it. So if you're thinking, how are these generations so different? Look at videos of them trying to use your technology, because they can't do it. They living in a different world.
We talked about in the car, me and Freddie this morning on the way up here, to think about. I'm going to show my little boy. He's 4 years old, 5 next week, and I'm going to show him some cartoons of my day, like a Batfink and things like that, just to see if he thinks they're still engaging as Fireman Sam is. But we'll see what happens.
Does he? Does he?
Don't know yet.
Don't know yet.
We'll find out.
Well, he's alpha. Yeah.
Yeah. So he'll be in that sort of.
Do you find the differences with him at home,
Well, I was saying to Freddie, I always think to myself that I'm of a younger generation, so because I'm more technology savvy than most people, even of my age group. In fact, people younger than me, so I tend to know most things that's going on. So I'm of the opinion that he needs to know everything. He's got to have a good ethic behind him. He's got to have a work. You got to have a work part of your life. You can't have this thing where you can just go off and just bum around basically. So you've got to have a work ethic and a discipline, and make sure he's got the right manners and stuff like that. So they're core things that everyone should be taught at a very young age. I think if you've got them from a young age, then you should be okay going forward. But then from a technologist point of view, I'm not scared of him having anything. So he's got his own laptop. He uses it now. He's got a Chromebook. He uses it. It's got all the parent controls on it, because I obviously want to keep it safe. Got a duty to look after, make sure he's safe and not looking dodgy. But he has his own laptop. He goes in. He gets up in the morning. The other day I was working. He gets his laptop out. He logs in himself. He's got the password on it. He's he's 4 years old. Turning 5 next week. He sits in there, goes on his maths, does his maths homework on it, prints off his certificates to the printer upstairs. He can't reach the printer upstairs, but he can print them off. He's that age. He can use my phone. He can get into my phone. He doesn't understand why it doesn't recognise him when he looks into it, because it's face recognition. But he just waits for it to ping up, and then he can just put the PIN number in. He knows everything. They're 100 mile an hour. So I get that 100%. But then from my point of view as a father, it's scary, because what's going to happen if we don't, like you say, if things aren't fixed and schools don't teach, which I thought was a great expression about the health online. You've got to have digital health going forward, and I think that's a good point. Curriculum should probably adopt something to say, do you know what? Not everything you see in the world's real. We should teach people that anyway, to be fair.
I think it's emotional intelligence that we need to be taught, because we're living in this world of digitalisation and machines and objects with personalities that don't have emotion, and we need to become a much more emotionally intelligent human race, because that's one thing that we have that robots don't have.
Yeah, well, I'll be interested to see if we have phones when he's 18. I would imagine they'd be gone by then.
I think the next
screens,
generation of phones are the see-through ones, right? So it's just like a piece of glass,
Yeah,
which when you smash, I have no idea.
Yeah, you've got that. And I also think you've got things like they've already adopted, contact lenses with screens in them. So, you can imagine basically you could have embedded under your skin technically, and you could just be on a HUD display within your contact lens. How distracting that would be, I don't know. But, that's probably a bit too future yet. But, this concept's all there.
I think we'll see a lot of devils of it.
Yeah.
A lot of devils of technology. I was saying to somebody the other day, I want a microchip in my hand because I'm really interested in keeping up with all this new technology. And I said, I want to get a microchip so I can have all my passport details and my bank details and everything on it. So what on earth would you want to do that for? Because if somebody walks past you on a train with a hacking system, they've got all your details, they've got everything. Yeah. So I think we're going to see the devil of all this technology. We're going to experience the bugs to be able to
make
stop
it better for
them.
Their age.
Yeah. And what's also interesting is I think in the future there'll be a lot less street crime because of facial recognition, things like this. However, hackers are going to get cleverer.
Yeah, 100%.
Gen Z might get up to work and think, there's no career progression, I'm not getting paid anything. I'm going to be a hacker because I know how to do it. Yeah, so there's going to be more cyber crime.
Digital crime.
Yeah, for sure.
We see it now. So with our business, we have a lot of fraud orders come through, and the criminals are becoming cleverer and cleverer.
Yeah.
There's some big changes coming out this year to do with credit card payments, how they are taken, but that will only see a certain amount of that fraud go away, because if these guys can basically get into or manipulate you to get into your account, then they can still get into your account. And once they get into your account, they can still override all the new European laws that's coming out in September this year. Which was supposed to stop most of it, but they're already getting around it now. So we've seen recently in the last few months, the criminals are actually, your 3D secure login page you get for your bank, they're now tricking you to give you details, so then when they can now replicate you going into a 3D secure account. So that sort of cybercrime is becoming more, but we
need to be educated in it.
Yeah, that's education. Don't click on an email, stuff like that, but never mind, it will. I'm sure it'll all get itself sorted. So just quickly, a few other little things, what sort of influences inspires you? Where do you look for influence and inspiration?
I watch a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of TED Talks. I tend to just leave them rolling in the background with the TED Talks. I think they're great. My influencers, Simon Sinek, Gary Vee, Oprah Winfrey, of course. I love watching a bit of Oprah for inspiration. I listen to a couple of podcasts, Smash the Box particularly. They've got lots of inspirational stories. Who else? Oh, have you read The Chimp Paradox?
No.
Oh, it's a mind management book. Professor Steve Peters, I believe. Brilliant book. So I have a few influencers. Seth Godin, another one. All the big ones on LinkedIn, YouTube. Yeah. So
I listened to Gary Vee for quite some time, but he, by his own admission, says that he just repeats the same stuff over and over again. So after a while, it does get not boring, but it's, unless you want to remind yourself of what he says. So he does go down the road of having the same thing over and over again, and it's quite nice to have refreshing new ideas from different people's perspective.
Yeah, he's got a really good model, and not everyone can have that model because he has this whole team of content creation.
Yeah, content's huge for him, and the speed at which he puts it out as well. Now
that's because of his team.
Yeah, but that allows him to be able to put it out so fast. It's really good.
Absolutely.
And so, any other books you've read? Anything else apart from that?
My favourite book for Gen Z is The Gen Z Effect. Like, I would recommend every business owner gets that book because it's not just about Gen Z, it's about everything that comes after. It's about our introduction to the digital post-generational world. That's The Gen Z Effect by Thomas Kalopoulos and Dan Kelston. We also have Gen Z at Work by David and Jonah Stillman. That's a really good one to get lots of tips from in the workplace. The Chimp Paradox, one of my favourite books. I've read loads of Expert Secrets, Russell Brunson, another really good one.
There's a lot of reading to catch up on that.
Yeah.
So, and just for anyone listening, where can people, if they want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Franki Johnson. I have my website, embracechangetoday.co.uk, or you can email me, franki@embracechangetoday.co.uk.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Franki, for today. It's been excellent having you on.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Cheers, thank you.
Thanks.